Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I'm in Dream Car Builder again, and on my last Dream Car Builder video, I got a lot of suggestions that I should make a helicopter. Now, I didn't look into how helicopters work or anything, I have a general idea, but I figured I could probably figure something out, so yeah, let's get right into it. So you see here, I actually have my plane built from the last episode, so I just decided to clean that off, start from a blank slate, and well, now I'm starting with the base of the helicopter. So the way I'm doing that is just with this weird trapezoidal shape. And the idea is to give something for the rotor and everything really to base off of. Eventually, see the tail connects to the back of that, but for now it's just going to be kind of a weird trapezoidal shape with those two cross beams in the middle to keep as triangles so that's a bit more stable. So it doesn't look too impressive yet, but it'll get there. These pieces I'm building up are going to actually be where the rotor sits on. So I'm moving them forward and I end up combining them just to a single point. And the long beams I'm building here are going to be the actual blades. So you see I'm building them up, and the height I chose is kind of arbitrary. Eventually I end up moving it down. I think I end up moving that back up, because I really don't know how helicopters work. It just seemed like it'd be a good height. But see, I'm trying that out here, and they're not awesome yet. And you see, I added in a couple more pieces of framing, and this didn't quite fix the problem either. What I ended up needed is a joint underneath the rotational point, which you see I'm adding in here. And what this joint does, you see how the blades are still rotating around, but they're at least locked parallel to the ground. So it's just a couple more pieces. You see they're completely stationary now, which is great. Now all I need to do is add in these two jets as the propulsion to actually spin around the blades. So I'm going to do that here, but I didn't quite set it up correctly, and yeah, they're kind of free to just rotate around as they'd like, the same way the blades were rotating. So I'm just going to need a couple more pieces of framing. You'll see I'm adding that in right here. And it looks good. When it spins up, they sort of like to point straight down, so I'm going to need a bit more support. But for now, at least this is a good start. So now what I'm adding in is what's possibly the most important part of the rotors. Those panels I just put in are the actual pieces that are going to be pushing air down. The lift coefficient is how much air they move. So this is the first time the rotor could actually lift that helicopter. But you see, it almost does. It gets a little hot there, but doesn't quite get there. And my theory at the time was that it probably didn't have enough surface area to push, well, to really lift up the entire helicopter. So I'm doing that in here with more panels. And you see, this actually does get me off the ground. It's a little chaotic though, because I didn't quite tune it yet, but this is still a really good start. Being able to get off the ground is definitely the first thing I want to do. So here I'm actually increasing the weight of the bottom of the helicopter, and the idea is that by moving the center of gravity down, I had a theory it was going to become more stable. I had no way of actually knowing this, but it didn't quite get off the ground when it was on the building there. But here, it sort of gets off the ground. It has enough to sometimes hop, but usually it only has enough to, like, coast, you see here. But it's at least stable, which means, since it's not chaotic, if I just add a little bit more either surface area or rotational speed, it should be able to get there. So now what I'm adding in is a top stabilizer, in addition to that bottom one I added in before. And this actually adds more weight, so it's probably bad, except that it holds those jets so that they're always parallel with the rotors. You can see here, they're never pointing down like they were before. And this gives me a bit better propulsion, so you can see it actually lifts up and it can actually get to the top of the buildings now. And this is good, but now what I want to do is have some say over what the helicopter is doing instead of just going up and down. So I'm adding it in here. With this joint I'm putting behind the rotor. And the idea is I'm going to have a rod that I can tell to expand and contract that's going to push the entire rotor assembly forwards and backwards. We'll tilt it forwards and backwards. You'll see in a second. And this will give me some say over what it's doing. So I'm doing that here. You see it tilts forwards and it can tilt backwards. And this is exactly what I want. The issue is, I mean, this is working for now, but I still have very little authority when I'm in the air over how they're tilting. It just makes the entire cabin go backwards and forwards. So I still have some kinks to work out, but it's at least a very good start. So one of the very important things I was messing around with for honestly hours was the weight distribution of the helicopter, and you see how increasing one of the frame pieces moves the center of gravity, which is that blue cross around. You see how increasing the propeller's weight moves it way up. So this is very important. You see there it didn't work out too well. But getting it to a point that was close to being underneath the rotor seemed to be where I was most successful. So now what I'm doing is adding in the tailpiece. I did this for, I guess, three main reasons. The first one is I wanted to get a stabilizer in the back so that it wouldn't want to move back and forth as much, or I guess what would it be, yaw back and forth as much. The second thing I wanted to do was add in a jet to the back, and eventually this is going to be what rotates the helicopter around, and I can choose what orientation I want to be pointing in. And the third reason is it makes it look more like a helicopter, so I felt like I kind of had to. It's a little tail heavy at the moment, which is kind of funny because I built the tail. And what I need to do is just decrease the weight of a bunch of those pieces, which you see I did, and increase the weight of the front. I also added in that jet into the back now, and you'll see I'll be moving the entire helicopter side to side. So now I should be rotating around. Yep. So you see I have that jet activating. And it swings the helicopter around. So now I can point in whatever direction I want, for the most part. I still have issues like moving the helicopter exactly where I want, because it still wants to like go backwards sometimes wants to go forward, sometimes it wants to rotate. It never really chooses a direction, but that's for a few reasons that I'm going to be tackling. So at this point I was a little frustrated, so I just decided to make some random things bigger. Here I have a, I guess, horizontal stabilizer, and I made it much bigger in the hope that it would help it not want to tilt up and down as much, which kind of didn't work at all. It ended up just making it want to drag, and it made it effectively more tail heavy. I also got this weird rotation orthogonal to the direction that the thrust is being produced, and I have no idea what was causing this. I'm sure it's something weird about the way torque works, but whatever. So I was still pretty frustrated, so I just decided to make the vertical stabilizer big too, because why not? And this actually did have a positive effect on it. I still had that effective tail heaviness from before when I increased the horizontal stabilizer size, but at least this time I could kind of get it to go in a straight line when I wanted to. You see here, it's really pitching up, but it's at least flying straight. So I shrunk back down the horizontal stabilizer, and I figured this probably would get me a good flight. And I also moved back the jet that rotates the entire helicopter side to side, because moving it further back, and I also made it bigger, gets me a bit more authority since it's further back from the center of mass. You see here, I can really whip it around. And this was really the last thing I had to do to get this thing flying. There's a few minor changes I ended up making, such as increasing some of the weight in the back to make it a bit more stable. But you see here, I'm just crashing into buildings and stuff. The main issue is just I'm not good at flying helicopters. So after quite a bit of practice, I ended up deciding I want to go for a flight all the way across the map. So you see I'm trying that here. I'm going to start on one of these back rocks, and I'm going to fly into the city. So I'm on the rock. It's less than an ideal start, but it's good enough. Only hit it a little bit. So I'm just going to try to get into the city at this point. I ended up deciding to make a quick pit stop in one of the little suburb thing areas, but otherwise it was pretty much a straight shot. I had a really good way of saving myself though, that I ended up learning. When I held back, it ended up pulling those propellers backwards, or it pulled the rotor backwards, and it ended up pulling me up quite a bit, which saved me a couple times. You see there twice in the first on 5 minutes of the flight, I saved myself. So here's a little suburb thing. I'm going to try to land on one of these roads. Also wanted to try out landing before I got to the city, because that was going to be very difficult. And you see here, I got a decent approach on this road, and get the landing. The sideways part is okay, because I can just prop myself back up with the rotor like that. And I'm calling that successful, and it was time to take off again. And it was much better than the first takeoff I had. Clearing this little, I guess, hill, it's not even like a mountain, just a hill, was very difficult because I wanted to get a lot of height, but getting a lot of height and moving forward in this thing is very difficult because they're just kind of separate actions. In fact, I think it has a natural tendency to move slightly backwards when it's trying to increase in height, which makes it very frustrating. You see here, I'm kind of always battling that. I'm sure with a bit more tuning I could have got it better, but it was at least working now, and I just wanted to try out this flight. I get stuck here for a while because it just keeps increasing in height and not moving forwards. I didn't know why at the time. My best guess is that I was slightly pitched backwards and didn't realize it, and I kept, undercompensating for how much I would need to go forwards again, because I was always scared I was going to pitch this thing down too much and it was going to fall straight into the ground. And you'll see why that would be an issue in about a second here. So now I'm in the city, and I'm going to go for a landing on that one building directly in front of me now. It's very difficult to get this thing in the right spot, and actually to move forwards, I kind of have to pitch sideways. I mean, I've turned sideways and it sort of goes forwards. And here is where things went wrong. I just barely missed the building, and I was kind of upset by that. And the rotors sort of folded in on themselves, but it was close enough. I was just going to take it. Here I ended up texturing the entire thing, and it doesn't look awesome because I'm not great at texturing stuff, but I thought it looked pretty cool with the metal blades and the nice wooden windshield. The glass windshield. So guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see some more Dream Car Builder, just let me know in the comments. Let me know what you want to try. It's kind of hard to come up with ideas at times because it's just such a broad game. There's so many things to do in it. I guess subscribe. Make sure to like the video for no reason other than I want you to like the video. And yeah, until next time.